Hey guys, what's up? So, walking home from work today and thinking a little about automotive technology and how irritating and ass backwards it is now. Um, so, let's have a little chat about reliability before versus now and with the newest shit. And this little thing called planned obsolescence that keeps the manufacturers making money more so than actually selling vehicles. Um, since the very early 1900s, we've had automobiles that were available for the common man in every family. The Model T was the first mass-produced one, followed by the Model A, and then everybody else started coming out with their own versions. The Dodge brothers and Studebaker and whatnot. So we went from the Model T and the Model A in the very early 1900s, and of course a few of your top end like Rolls Royces and stuff like that being the only ones on the block, to in the 30s and 40s having a much more varied selection and a lot of different ideas about how to build things, and all that variation in ideas of how to build things made up for some really great in the field research on what works, what doesn't, what lasts the longest, and what keeps people on the road. Now, you go from the 30s and 40s all the way up through the 60s and 70s, you got really good advances in longevity of components and serviceability and overall lifespan. So you went from in the 40s to the 30s and even into the 50s, and some stuff into the 60s. You had engines that had Babbitt rod bearings and shit that to rebuild them took a lot more effort and machine time versus when you went to replaceable rod bearings and main bearings. It just made things more easily serviceable and rebuildable. So things like that were advancements in the technology. Improve the overall lifespan, because you can take that engine and you can rebuild it several times before you need to just get a new one, start with a fresh block, fresh crank, either or. Now we got really good, and going up into the late 70s through the 80s were kind of a funky time where you were adopting emissions controls and some rudimentary electronic controls that were not helpful in the reliability and longevity department. And once we got out of that into the 90s, things picked up, became more reliable. You started having a lot more commonplace fuel injection and electronically controlled transmissions. That's when your 700R4 GM transmissions turned into your 4L60Es, and you got throttle body injection that gave way to the more advanced multi-port injection and the Vortec series stuff, like on the GM. Now Dodge stuck with throttle bodies for a while longer, and Ford was ahead of the time. They started with their multi-port injection in the, I want to say, the late 80s, maybe the early 90s. I'm not that big of a Ford fan because I think they're built like shit, but it's because I've worked on all of them. So in my opinion, we peaked in the automotive industry as far as longevity and serviceability are concerned in the very late 90s to the mid 2000s, before 2010. I think right there in 2007, 2008, when everything collapsed and the auto manufacturers had to be bailed out, I think that's when they made the decision to say, okay, this stuff we've got on the road now is lasting a bit too long. We need to get these people that are buying our vehicles, our products, to stop hanging on to these older vehicles so long, even though they're lasting. So what we'll do is we'll make the vehicles not last as long. We'll make them more problematic so people get tired of fixing them and they'll buy a new one. And they'll get, maybe they'll get into another lease program and they'll just keep rolling over. You know, you'll do the same thing if you buy it. You can just roll over what you owe in the last one to the new one. And it's kind of a keeping up with the Joneses thing. But where we went wrong, or not us, but the manufacturers, and I guess saying where they went wrong isn't right, because they knew exactly what they're doing and they're still doing it. They intentionally made shit less reliable. They intentionally made stuff where it will fail faster, so you get tired of it and you want to buy a new one. Now, for example, we've been away from points and condenser ignition for a long time. You know, we've had coil on plug and HEI ignition systems and reliable fuel injection systems for a very long time now, and they worked fine. Yes, they had their problems, but they weren't something that was failing all the time and something that was really problematic like old points and condensers that you had to fuck with all the time. But when we got away from things like throttle cables, for example, what the hell was ever wrong with a throttle cable? Having a throttle body that was controlled by a cable connected to a pedal, or even a rod linkage connected to your pedal. There's nothing that goes wrong there, except after hundreds of thousands of miles or many years, the cable might snap. Okay, the bushings in the throttle body may wear out and cause a vacuum leak eventually, but you're talking a very long time, 15, 20 years or better. Now we've got electronic controlled throttle bodies that are a constant pain in the ass. They fail for no reason. You know, they're on the engine, of course, so they're subject to heat all the time, which anybody that knows anything knows heat kills electronics, which, by the way, is why some people got a smart idea, like Cummins and some others, to mount their ECM on the side of the damn block, where it's subject to all the heat and the vibration from the engine all of the time. Yeah, tell me they didn't do that on purpose. Why else would you mount the computer control module on the side of the block unless you wanted it to be a problem? It makes no sense. So now, let's see, from the early 1900s, when they first put electric lights on vehicles, all the way up into the early 2000s, you had all analog, manually controlled electronics. You know, your lights, if you had electric windows, electric seats, that shit was all controlled just by switches and relays. And there wasn't a problem with that. You know, when you did have a problem, it was because the motor was bad, or on, you know, electronic seats or whatever, or your windows, or a relay was bad, or you popped a fuse, or a combination of things. Now we've got a control module for everything. You've got a body control module that interacts with all the other computers on the vehicle through a CAN bus. And the body control modules are famous for failing. On the Chrysler vehicles, you have an integrated power module, which is a computer controlled fucking fuse block and relay block under the hood, where it's subject to all the heat. And they love to fail for no damn reason, and they're a couple of $1,000 to fix. And well, guess what? Once the vehicle's more than 10 calendar years old, the OEM doesn't carry replacements anymore. That's an obsolete part. Guess what? Buy a new vehicle or go to the junkyard. So how long is that going to last? You're not going to keep these vehicles on the road for 30 or 40 years like you can with older vehicles. It's just, you know, in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, you might have a powertrain control module, which is your engine and transmission control module in one, or you might have an ECM, engine control module, and a separate transmission control module. And then depending on how the vehicle was optioned, you may have also had an airbag control module and what else? Oh, ABS module if your vehicle had anti-lock brake system. So if any of those modules failed, you're not really out a lot of money. Like, your ABS module can fail and you're still going to have working brakes. Okay, your airbag module can fail and you're still going to be able to drive the vehicle. It's not, you're most likely not going to get in a wreck every day, right? So, replace at your convenience or when you can afford it. Now, if any of that shit goes out, you're stuck. You're not, like, the vehicles go into limp mode, if they will even let you take it out of park once you've cranked it. It's insane. And that's what the auto manufacturers knew from the get-go. Mechanical stuff is, in most cases, it's hard to make it unreliable and make it last long enough to get out of your warranty period. But with electronics, the electronics are always the failure point. Anytime you add electronics as a critical component in a system, that is going to be the part that lets you down. Take the 98.5 to 2002 Dodge 24 valve diesels, for example. You have a great engine, but the injection pump has a built-in electronic control module on the side of the pump that you can't replace separately. That is the only part on them that goes out ever. Like, the motors are pretty much bulletproof. The pump guts and all never have problems, but that damn module on the side loves to go out, and every few years. Now, if you can keep the pump temperature down by keeping adequate fuel flow, changing your fuel filters when you should, and stuff like that, it helps. But that is still always the failure point, and they do always fail. That's why a lot of people are doing P-pump swaps on 24 valves now. You take the old mechanical pump from the 12 valve diesel and put it on the 24 valve, and you're good to go again. You don't have to worry about that shit anymore. But this is all planned obsolescence. Just like your cell phone. They build these things so that they only last a couple of years, 2 or 3 years, maybe 4 or 5 if you're really lucky. And then you need to get a new phone, because they'll stop doing the updates to support them, or they will do an update that uploads a battery vampire into your phone, or just the increased workload of the new program updates they do kills your phone battery over a half a day, and it just pisses you off to the point you get tired of dealing with this old phone, so you want to go buy a new one. They're doing the same thing with vehicles, and they're not a $15,000 or $20,000 vehicle like they used to. Now they're $40,000, $60,000, $80,000. So the point of the game is to keep your pocket empty, keep you paying a bill, keep you in a note, keep you where you can always have your vehicle taken away if you get in a bad spot and financially. And they don't last, man. I mean, I know there's a lot of people that want something new and shiny all the time. By the time that new car smell goes away, they want to get a new one. When the new model comes out, they want to be the one kid on the block that's got the newest, coolest car or truck or whatever. And I understand that. It is nice if you've got the money, if you make the money, to be able to afford the things that look nice and perform well. But, I mean, that's up to you, how you want to spend your money. But when you see that the companies are intentionally fucking you, it just turns my stomach. That's why I drive older vehicles only. That's why, to me, it makes more sense to spend a couple of grand on an old beater and then put $4,000 or $5,000, $6,000, $10,000 into it to make it a nice vehicle again, to completely rebuild it, paint it, new upholstery, whatever. Because that vehicle's still going to last longer than the brand new shit sitting on the lot right now, unless you wreck it. All bets are off then. But I don't know, man. It's just food for thought. I hate it. I hate the way everything is gone, and I can see it happening. I've been watching it happen. I used to work at a Dodge and Chevy dealership, and I could just see the shit that we had to replace, like the HVAC blend doors, right? Sometimes the actuators, which instead of being vacuum like they used to be, which lasted a good long time, are all electronic now. They're a little electronic stepper motor. Sometimes those motors would go bad. Sometimes it would be the gear on the blend door itself. And the problem with them was that the gear it's only a half a gear on most of them, a sector gear. And instead of being a solid gear, they were plastic, of course. Instead of being solid, it was just a gear, like an outline of half the gear. The hole inside was hollow, no plastic in it, with teeth on the outside where it met the stepper motor. And what would happen is, of course, being a little plastic hollow turd, that gear would break, and then you'd have to take it in for service. And you pull the whole dash out and replace it. Now, conveniently enough, the replacement part from Chrysler, and this was on Dodges, it was a full solid, also plastic gear. But this is the kind of shit they pull to keep you coming back. The automotive companies make more profit from parts and service departments than they do from actually selling vehicles, and that's always been the case. It still is. So when your warranty is approaching, or if you don't have a full warranty on everything, powertrain and everything else, you might have to just play their game. Trade it in, get another one, or sell it, buy something older, and put the extra money into that. All of the creature comforts and shit you have on these new vehicles, your backup cameras and your heated seats and all of that shit, you can put on older vehicles. I can put all that same shit on my 53-year-old Deuce and a half if I want. I just don't want all that because I know that is the stuff that fails. I don't need an infotainment center that's going to take a shit and then cause my vehicle not to want to go down the road because it's set a code. And I've seen that happen. So take that for what it's worth. Just some food for thought and discussion. So hey, good morning. So here's another tangent that I forgot to go on in my spree of spewing frustration before, and I started on it. I know I said that it was difficult in most cases to make mechanical things unreliable and last longer than the warranty period. However, around the same time that I mentioned everything else went to shit, we started seeing the same thing with engines, and across the brands, Chrysler, GM, Ford. So, for a long time we had reliable, long-lasting engines and internals, pretty regardless of the brand. And at some point, Ford adopted their modular engines, and I don't know exactly what year they came out with that shit, and they were fine for a while, and then somehow they started just blowing spark plugs out of the head, pulling the threads out of the heads, and that's plugs that had never been changed. People that were not messing with them or over tightening them, it just, let's thread the plug into aluminum and let it see high cylinder pressure all the time and see how long that lasts. And of course it didn't. And then they came out with their 3-piece spark plugs that always break off when you try to change them, so you have to have a special tool and procedure for fixing that. That's just stupidity. That's piss poor design on Ford's part, which is kind of one of the things I mentioned. Good morning. And then we started seeing with the Chrysler, the 3.6 liter Pentastars, catastrophic engine failures under 60,000 miles, broken valve springs under 20,000 miles, dropped valves from that under 20,000 miles, and sometimes you get lucky and the valve would just ride on the piston up and down. But sometimes it would also cause a catastrophic engine failure, and there's no reason for that. We've been building this stuff for decades reliably, Chrysler knows how to build a valve spring. They've been making high performance engines since the 50s and 60s. And then, you know, GM with the throttle body injected 350s, they lasted forever. They're a basically bulletproof motor. They don't have a lot of problems other than the intake gaskets leaking coolant all the time. Then they went to the LS motors, and the LS motors are fine. All the series of them, 1, 2, 3, 4, up 7, you know. The only real issues that they had that we saw were the NOx sensors, an electronic part that like to collect water in the valley where they sit and rust out and go bad. But then sometime around 2009, 2010, we started having them come in at low mileage with cam and lifter failures, just catastrophic cam and lifter failures, wiping out whole lobes, breaking off lifters, and filling the engine with metal particles. And sometimes those customers got a new engine, and sometimes the warranty department decided to just put a new cam and one lifter in it and do their best to clean the metal out. And there's no reason for that. They never had a problem with that before. I don't know if they changed the material that they were making it out of, or if they just changed the procedure for hardening of the cam and the lifters. But yeah, that's one of the things I'm talking about. And then you get into the variable displacement shit, where it drops off cylinders when they're not needed, and then cam phasers for variable valve timing, all that. Like, I know it's for fuel economy, but did it really do that much? No. Did it really cause a shitload of headache and problems for customers and techs later on down the road? Absolutely. So there it is. And I'm sure I'll think of more later. So it's a little later in the day now, lunch break time. It's raining now. Welcome to monsoon season in Korea. More on low mileage catastrophic failures. The new Broncos that Ford has come out with. A big problem with them, and I'm sure some of you guys have seen it, is very common catastrophic engine failure at 20,000 miles or less. I don't know why it's happening or what they're going to do about it. I'm not really in the civilian automotive field anymore, obviously, so I'm not going to be around in the shops to see how that all pans out. But come on, man, you can't even build an engine that can last 20,000 miles with, you know, the advances in metallurgy we've had since the early days of automotive all the way up until now. I mean, that's what I was talking about before when I was saying everything lasts longer and is more serviceable now, is you're able to have higher performance and longer lasting engines because not only has the design improved in a lot of cases, or did improve, now it's on the way down on the bell curve, but the metallurgy got so much better. You know, back in the day, you were lucky to have an engine that lasted 100,000 miles before it needed to be rebuilt, all the way up into the, you know, the 80s. And then in the 90s and early 2000s, you got to where it was commonplace to have a stock engine that could last 200,000 plus miles without needing any serious internal work or rebuild or anything. And now, with more advancement in technology and even better metallurgy, somehow we've got new production engines that won't last 30,000 miles without coming apart. And this is not in the case of abuse, this is just people driving their vehicles like a normal person would. I'm sure there's some people that are abusing them. Yes, you're always going to have that, but that's not the case here with these Bronco engines. And as I've mentioned, I'm not a Ford fan, and this is one of the reasons. I mean, look at the 6.4 Power Stroke. Those are already a figurehead in the dustbin of history because they were such horrible garbage. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe maybe we'll get it figured out. Maybe the automotive companies will do something different and figure out that people aren't buying their shit anymore because we've got them figured out. Maybe they'll really keep pushing all this electric vehicle shit, and then you'll really see how bad it can get when your car is just exactly like your cell phone, when it updates overnight while you're sleeping and you can't go to work the next morning because the update failed or some shit like that. You know, the lightning hit too close and now the whole system is fried and your car is totaled. No, I don't know. Any number of things, man. There's stuff we have yet to see that is going to be really stupid, I'm sure of it. But I can promise you I will not own an electric vehicle. Yeah. Ask for every seat, but that one ain't for mine. All right. So one more day and some final thoughts on what I've been talking about after I've had my morning coffee. A little bit of a recap. We know throughout this discussion now that there is no reason for all of the computer controlled replacements of previously analog things that worked fine before that are now failing at an exponential rate. There is no reason to have, say, a body control module that's prone to failure, plus a door control module in all four doors of the vehicle, plus sometimes the tailgate or hatch of the vehicle, depending on what it is. A module for each heated electronic seat. All of that. Plus, your infotainment center that also is prone to failure. Your tire pressure monitoring system. I know that was federally mandated for fuel economy and shit, but that is always a point of failure. And it doesn't put the vehicle out of commission, but it's still... people don't like to run around with bad components on their car that's constantly flashing lights and warnings at them. So makes you want to go get it fixed, makes you want to spend money. There's no reason for all of those modules to replace relays and switches that were reliable and problem-free for the most part, where now they are not. There is no reason for modern engines to be suffering not only constant electronic related issues from sensors and actuators that go bad because of the nature of electronics not liking heat and vibration, being in an environment they're not supposed to be in. Not only that, there is no reason for them to be suffering catastrophic internal component failures, except that those failures have been designed in from the get-go. Automotive companies actually do spend quite a lot of money figuring out how to make a component last just long enough to get out of the warranty period and then fail. They do, in fact, research how to make their components fail at certain mileages. That's not a myth. They do that. Now, over the past few years, the whole 2-3 year long COVID thing, yeah, vehicles weren't really selling. They were high priced. Somehow they weren't being produced, so stocks were low, and I don't know. That was a whole shit show, and we're still suffering the repercussions of that. But I have seen You know, like before COVID, all you had was Tesla and maybe a couple other little electric vehicles out there that were available on the market and not in large numbers. And then as soon as the COVID shit really started to end, suddenly there's a whole huge market and all these different ones, and they're really, really, really pushing this stuff hard. And it's got me wondering if maybe some of this stuff is not related. Maybe maybe these manufacturers have seen this direction that they're going coming, and I'm sure they did for a few years now. Um, and maybe they've been making this stuff fail a lot more and cost more at the same time to get people to get sick of these vehicles. Say, oh, I'm tired of buying a brand new vehicle, and 20,000 miles later I need an engine. And well, maybe I'll try an EV next time. Maybe I'll buy one of the electric vehicles and see if they do better. People, industry, and government are always trying to push, trying to usher people, the general population, in the direction that they want us to go. And it's nice seeing people push back on this issue. I know the EVs are not really selling well. A lot of people don't want them, like me. I have zero interest in ever owning an EV. I don't care if it's economical. I don't care if it's good for the environment. I have no interest in it. And even here in South Korea is one of the places in the world that they adopt new technology faster than almost anyone else. And I've only seen a couple of EVs around here, and the entire time I've been here, there's one Tesla on site at work. Um, and every once in a blue moon, I'll hear some other, like a Hyundai or something, hum by on the road when I'm walking in town. But there's just not a lot. Uh, I don't I don't think that they're really getting the adoption that they're trying to make it look like they are, because people just don't want it. Um, you know, I but I think that's what has been going on. I think that they not only are seeing the industry is not only seeing this as its last like the last breath, so to speak, of internal combustion vehicles, but they're just trying to push this crap off onto us at higher prices and make us sick of it with the low quality it is. And it all kind of works together in their favor if they really are trying to push us in this direction, and they are. It's obvious, which is one of the reasons that I will fight it tooth and nail. I don't like to be pushed, and especially in a direction that I don't want to go, and I will do absolutely everything in my power to resist that. That's the kind of person I am. If I want to do something, I will do it on my own accord, at my own pace. I will not be pushed. I will not be forced. Um, so that's it. I mean, you can stop making parts for all this stuff. That's fine. Um, if I need to rebuild my Cummins 20 years down the road and I can't find a rebuild kit for it, hell, I will make my own rod bearings. I will cut my own rings. I will make a copper head gasket from a blank sheet of copper. I can do all this stuff. Now, most people can't, but other people can be taught to by people like me. So, look, if any of you captains of automotive industry or politicians are watching, you do your best. You do your best to push me, and I will show you that there ain't a damn thing you can do about it. I'm going to keep my old junk on the road, um, whether you let me register it or not. I really don't give a flying shit. Uh, that old truck will be out there burning used motor oil if it has to. If I can't buy diesel anymore, I don't care. I am not going to go along with your agenda, and I don't care about owning a new vehicle ever. I don't need that. Don't want an EV. Don't want any of this new crap. So good luck with that. Yeah. If the laws make sense, I'll follow them. If they don't, I don't give a shit. Uh, and I know people have said, well, you know, eventually they'll just make it where you can't register, you can't insure these old internal combustion vehicles anymore. Or if you don't have, you know, the what the hell is it? The driverless driving. What the? It's still early. You know what Tesla's doing with the fucking automatic driving shit. Yeah, I'm sure eventually they'll make it where you can't insure a vehicle unless it has that. Whatever. All that's doing right now is causing problems in big cities' traffic jams, and they're not pulling them over cops, and it's all a giant shit show. And I'm not going to be part of it. I will do my best to stay out of it. So, yeah. Anyway, that's just kind of my thoughts on the matter. I see it. I see some of the stuff that we're headed toward in the future, and that they're already talking about, and I don't like any of it. So, um, watch yourself. Watch what you spend your money on. Remember that your dollars count, and I think it is really kind of opening their eyes, opening industry and politicians' eyes right now, how much people are pushing back on this adoption of electric vehicles. Because at the end of the day, most of us that have common sense know it's not about the environment and all that. It's about controlling us, controlling what we can do and what we can spend our money on and where we can go and when and how. So, yeah. Hope this has been entertaining and maybe provoked some thought in some of you guys. And I know a lot of you guys that watch my channel, you probably are right along the same lines of thinking as me. And we ain't alone by a long shot. So don't let them make you feel that way. So have a good day, guys. Appreciate you watching. Catch you next time.